Hello there, Jason Napalm here for another video, and I just want to talk about a challenge. Joe Rogan the other day, he had a guy on his show called Wes Huff, who is a biblical historian. He's professionally trained as a historian, languages, biblical languages, and so forth. And he was on the Joe Rogan show, and he was on there mainly about his rebuttal of Billy Carson's ideas about the Bible and about how it was changed and how it wasn't true and it was incorrect and so forth. Long story short, Wes Huff defeated Billy Carson in a video, and then Joe Rogan called him onto his show. Now, when I've been online and looking in comments of videos and stuff, I see the same old things that non-Christians say, atheists say, and it's just the same things. It's like, well, Jesus never existed. It's like one of the most ridiculous, pathetic statements that a person could make, because it clearly shows they know nothing about history. They've done no research whatsoever in seeing if Jesus is a real person. Do you know what I mean? People don't really question whether Shakespeare was a real person or whether Homer, Socrates, the philosophers, Alexander the Great, King Herod, and some of these other people of history that there's no photographs of. They don't question their existence, but people questioning Jesus' existence is just ridiculous. And I just say to these people, it's just a really rubbish thing to say, because there's so much evidence there. And I'm not going to go into all the evidence because I haven't got time in this video, and because other people can explain it better than me. I can explain it well enough if I'm talking to you in person, and if you was to debate me on video, I could bring it all up and, just bury you with it. But there is so many people on YouTube, there's so many people, Bible historians, professors, and, master's degree people who can prove from history that Jesus was a real person. So when I see people say Jesus, did he even exist, or he never existed, it's just a really rubbish thing to say. It's pathetic. It just shows ignorance on the person's behalf. And you might say, well, this sounds really like quite rude. Well, it's not rude, it's just what it is, it's just ridiculous. Another thing is when atheists say, or Darwinists say, well, where did God come from? And then when you say, well, God has always been there, they say, well, he couldn't have always been there. There must have been something before. Well, how about this one? What was before the universe? What was before the Big Bang? What was before that? Well, another Big Bang, another Big Bang. The laws of thermodynamics say that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So where did energy come from? But atheists are quite happy, and physicists are quite happy to say it's an obsolete question. And I was watching Richard Dawkins, and Jordan Peterson said to him, what came before the Big Bang? And he said, that's not even a question. He said, I'm not a physicist, I'm a biologist. You'd have to speak to a physicist. But a physicist says that's not even a question you can ask. So why is it then that an atheist can say, well, where did God come from? But we can't say, where did the Big Bang come from? Double standards. But I can tell you that I can tell you a theory. This is a theory, okay? And it could very well be a fact, but it's a theory. I'm going to put it as a theory. God is the creator of all things. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, that means that not even God created energy. So how does that work? How it works is that the theory is that God, being a spiritual being, is a being of pure energy. We see a few hints of this throughout the Bible. What is a spirit being made of? What is a spiritual being made of? Is it just ether? Is it just some light of a heavenly material that can't be detected? by the UV spectrum or whatever. It's not on the UV spectrum. What are spirits made of? What are they consist of? And so the theory goes, and some people do believe this, that God, being a being of a spiritual being, and spiritual beings being beings of energy came directly from God. He didn't create it because he is a being of pure energy. And so therefore creating comes straight from him. Electricity, all heat and all these other things, all these energies we know about, they all come from God in the beginning anyway. That gives a good explanation, really. As I said, I will emphasise it is a theory, and if anyone can disprove this theory, then fair enough. But putting the theory to one side, why is it hard to believe that God has always been there, but it's not hard, but it's easier to believe that energy has always been there with no origin? Okay? What would you even mean energy? You couldn't. So, do you know what I mean? There's some questions that atheists say, and it just doesn't make the blind bit of sense. Another one is natural selection. I do believe that. And I was watching a video the other day about evolution, because what I talk about is what I've studied over 32 years. I've been keeping up to date with, I really enjoy psychology, and I've got diplomas in psychology, and I'm a qualified theoretical psychotherapist, so I enjoy things like that. With science as well, I keep up to date with the sciences on my newsfeed, not a Facebook newsfeed, but a proper newsfeed, and things like that. And also, I like to keep up to date with what's going on in the evolutionary news as well, what their new discoveries are and findings. And one of the things that people try to say is that Darwinian evolution is true, and they base it on natural selection. But natural selection isn't Darwinian evolution, it's just science. Darwin didn't come up, he spoke of that idea, but what you've got to realise is that if you know more about Darwin than just that his name was mentioned, do you even know what ship he sailed? Do you know what ship he was on? What ship he sailed? When he found out about these different birds and their beaks, it was called the Beagle. I've done my homework. And there was other people before Charles Darwin that had evolutionary theories anyway. And one of the natural selection theories was, and sciences, that's now a scientific fact, was actually spoken by a guy called Blythe. And he was a Christian, he was a God-fearing man, he believed the Bible, but also he understood about natural selection. Natural selection does not prove Darwinian evolution. Yeah? What Darwinian evolution at its root is that we came at some point from the sea, okay, some amoeba, and then that evolved, and then you go through the different animals, becoming fish becoming lizards becoming birds, and then birds becoming, and so forth, rinse and repeat. And then at some point we evolved from apes, okay? Now with that is not a scientific fact, and there's no evidence whatsoever to support that, okay? There are no transitional state fossils of one species becoming another. There is evolutionary proof of birds and their feathers changing colour, of animals changing their fur, growing long, growing short, depending on where they are, the laws of adaptation, beaks changing, all that. Don't argue with that, because that's a fact, And what I was watching the other day, this scientist said that the genetic pool of these animals, when they were created, it was already there, so that when they migrated and went in different places, the genetic ability to adapt and to change and evolve was there already. It didn't just sort of pop out of thin air. Bats always had echolocation. When they were created, when bats were created and when they came into being, they were meant to be cave-dwelling animals. They were meant to live in the dark. And so therefore eyesight wasn't needed. And so therefore echolocation was needed, and that was already there in the genetic makeup of the bat. The Bible speaks about each kind producing after its own. You get different kinds of dogs, different kinds of cats, whether it's a house cat, a tiger, you know, different elephants, just a regular elephant in a zoo. Then you had woolly mammoths. Okay, woolly mammoths were found in very cold areas of the world. All these creatures evolved, but they didn't change their kind. Are you with me? All these animals and creatures evolved in the way of adaptation. Okay, adaptation. Feel free to laugh. They didn't turn into a different species. There was no lizard becoming a bird. Okay, there is no fossil record. There is no fossil record at all. And Charles Darwin himself said that that kind of evolution is a theory that can never be proved. It can't be proved. And it has never been proved. There is no transitional state of apes becoming humans. And there would be millions of these fossils. And there would be millions of fossils of animals becoming one and another. And why would it stop now? Why would it stop now? And I'm sure that somebody's got some kind of answer to come back. But I don't want just any old answer. I want scientific facts. I want you to produce at least 3, I'm being generous now, at least 3 transitional state fossils. Examples of transitional state fossils. 3 of them. And I've said this in the comments of one of my other videos. No answer. Because there are none. Things like Piltdown Man, the Infidel Man, and all them lot. We all know about fakes and forgeries. I think it was Piltdown Man that was exposed by the Reader's Digest back in 1947 of how different bones were found in an area. Pig's teeth, ape's skull, human femur. They're all in the area, in the same area of the land. And then they got put together and suddenly got this fantastic drawing of a half man, half ape that was made up of a couple of teeth of a pig, skull cap of a human, and the femur of a skull cap of an ape, shall I say, and a femur of a human being, you know. And then there's arthritic skeletons that were found, and they've been used as proof of evolution, you know. Stand it up straight. Oh, there we go. So, I'm convinced, yeah, and I challenge anyone watching this video, get on there, and I'll do a video with you. I don't need to do any research. I can just do it right here and now. I'm challenging you to prove your atheism. Prove that your atheism is true. Okay? It's time for... It's past time now that atheists and non-Christians and non-religious people and non-spiritual have said, oh, well, Christianity's got to prove it's real. The Bible has to prove it's real. God has to prove he's real. Well, how about you prove that your atheism is scientific? Prove it. Prove that your atheism has evidence to support atheism. Show me evidence and proof that there is no God. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's impossible. Whereas, on the other hand, there is an abundance of proof for the evidence of God and his creation. The intelligence comes from intelligence. Like comes from like, you know. Intelligence begets intelligence, and that's where we come from. Now, a person could debate and say, well, does it have to be God? Can't it just be some supreme intelligence? Well, all the evidence points towards it being the God of the Bible, but at least you're making progress. Richard Dawkins' best friend, one of his best friends, who was a lady that recently become a Christian. She was a Muslim. She was brought up Muslim, and she was one of Richard Dawkins' best friends, and she was a fellow atheist and Darwinist, and she said she came to the end of her tether of her life. She was just being so stressed and so upset, and she called out to God, and God heard her and answered, and she became a Christian. And in the interview with her and Richard Dawkins I watched, Richard Dawkins just laughed at her and just said, "I can't believe that you believe this nonsense." And he was really rude and really horrible to her. And she went on to do a video interview with Alex Connor, who hosts videos as well, YouTube channel. And I think it's called The Cosmic Skeptic. And he, even though he's probably more inclined towards Richard Dawkins, even he could see from this woman's story that there was truth in it. And this lady, I do remember her name, but it's just not coming to the front of my head at the moment, my mind. But she said that atheism is very arrogant and very narrow-minded, because it won't accept that there's no spiritualness, there's no spirituality, there's nothing beyond the machine of the body. The brain is just a machine, we're just chemicals and energy flying around us, you know, we're just drones really. And her coming out of the atheistic movement, becoming a Christian, was a big thing, because now she's able to see that there's more than just the physical world. And all science does is prove what is physically a fact. Science will not work on the mind, the brain, yes, but not the mind. Science cannot work on the metaphysical, it cannot work on the intangible. Okay? So if you're trying to scientifically prove that we have a soul, well, guess what? You can't do it. Right now, as far as I know, you can't prove you've got a soul. You can prove scientifically through brain activity and life after death experiences, near-death experiences and so forth, that there is a consciousness there, okay? And you go by the science. It's no different really from when you go to, say like if you've been told that you've got dementia, Alzheimer's, or even autism, and some of the other neurological conditions. A lot of the time you can't actually tell physically and scientifically whether you have factually got Alzheimer's or dementia, okay? You would have to have an autopsy. So in this life you're not going to know absolutely if you've got it. So what happens is that the neurologist will give you criteria and say these are the conditions for Alzheimer's, dementia, autism and etc. Okay? And if you fit that criteria, then there's it's beyond reasonable doubt that you do have autism and dementia, Alzheimer's and whatever else you may be diagnosed with. In a court of law, what they look for is not absolute proof and evidence 100%. They look for beyond reasonable doubt. Now check that out. In a court of law, they say, we want evidence to suggest beyond reasonable doubt that this is true. And beyond reasonable doubt, we can believe that there's a soul, that we have a spirit being. But again, the science cannot prove that 100%. And so psychology, which is my field, and psychotherapy, neuropsychology as well, these fields that I'm in, I would say that psychology is not really an exact science. And so you will get two groups saying psychology is science and some saying it isn't science, but it's not absolute science. You can't examine it. It's not physical. The mind is not a physical thing. Okay? It's intangible. So you will find that when you try to apply the wrong testing methods, it doesn't work. So if you're trying to prove God by God's existence by science or spiritual things by science, it doesn't work that way. But on the other hand, like I said, scientifically, if you look at the criteria of creation and how things were formed and DNA and all these intricacies of how the human eye works and the brain having billions of brain cells and the immune system and anyone who studied biology, and I've studied biology because I'm a fitness instructor as well, so I had to study biology. When I was reading about the body, I was just blown away by these things. It's like, there's no way that could have just evolved over millions of years to become what it is. There is intelligence in this creation. It was put there on purpose. This part of the body was meant to work with that, and this is meant to do this, and it's fantastic. And like I said, even if you say you don't necessarily believe there's a God, well, at least start with entertaining the idea that there is a supreme intelligence out there. And you might say, well, I think it's an alien. Well, at least one thing is that you've begun to look outside of the box of atheism, the box of just the physical world, and now you're beginning to delve into the realms that are spiritual and beyond the physical realm. So I'm not telling you to believe in aliens, let's get that straight, yeah? Because you won't find the answer there. But I think the intelligent person would at least say, look, and this is where we fall into the box of agnostics. Agnostics say, I believe there's something out there, but I don't know what. I believe there could be a higher power, but I don't know what. That's fine. That's intelligent, because by keeping your mind open to probabilities and possibilities, you're now exercising intelligence and exercising open-mindedness. And that's what we should do. If we're to be fulfilled human beings, we need to... That's the whole idea of philosophy, and the whole idea of, you know, the looking outside of ourselves and thinking, is there something else out there? And like I said, you might say, you don't believe there's a God. Well, okay. But don't shut your mind off to the possibility that there is. The only reason people shut their mind off to God, and I know this because I was the same, I wasn't always a Christian. I was not brought up as a Christian. And for all my childhood, teenage years up to I was an adult, I was not a Christian. And I was an ASBO child. And I didn't care for Christianity or anything that made people look like weaklings and nerds and geeks. I was all about the alpha, looking alpha and stuff like that. And so that's what my lifestyle was involved in. But then, you know, I came to a revelation one day. God gave me a revelation and revealed himself to me in a powerful way. And I was left with a choice. I've had this experience now. Do I ignore it and just carry on being in unbelief? Or do I accept this and open my mind to the possibility that this is true after all? And I decided to go with, I've had this experience, I want to see what more there is to this. Because the reason I didn't want to believe in God according to the Bible was because I was happy in my life, doing my own thing, living my own way, a law unto myself, not taking orders from anyone, and that's it. And that is the bottom line. The reason why people are atheists, non-believers, is because they don't want to change their life. They don't want to be held accountable or be subject to a higher power. It's just natural for us to be rebellious as human beings. So the challenge is down. Okay, anyone who watches this, I challenge you. And if you want to do a video with me, like by Facebook call, we'll do it. We'll do it. But I do say to you, you better get prepared. You better work hard and do your research, because I will humiliate you and I will bring you down if you come at me with foolishness and you come at me with things that have not been researched. Okay, because I've done my research. 32 years of studying the history of Christianity, the archaeology, and the theories of evolution, Darwinism, atheism, and other religions as well. So if you come at me, you better come hard and you better come prepared. Okay? And you might say, you sound really arrogant. No, this isn't arrogant, this is confidence. This is confidence. This is what I do.